So photosynthesis is from the word, it's from two words, photosynthesis. Photo is from the word photon, not picture. It's from the word photon, and the word photon means light. So photosynthesis is synthesizing food using sunlight. So it means to make food with the help of sunlight. So plants are the ones that undergo photosynthesis. And so sometimes I tell my students that you are not a producer, that you don't produce food, that you are a consumer. And the fruit student told me, but I make my food. I said, you prepare your food, you are not making it. Plants are the ones that make food. They make food with the process of photosynthesis. They use sunlight. The reason that you can use sunlight is because they have a pigment in them that have affinity for sunlight, that is able to attract sunlight, and that is chlorophyll. So chlorophyll, which is what is green in plants, is that green pigment that is in plant that makes them have green appearance. It's able to attract sunlight, and it uses that sunlight as catalyst to synthesize food. All right. So we have just looked at cellular respiration, which is how we harvest energy by breaking down food particle. But now we want to look at the reverse of that process, because plants are going to take up the CO2 that you breathe out with water and make it to make glucose back. So it's a reverse reaction. Photosynthesis, cellular respiration may be like the forward, and photosynthesis is the reverse reaction. So both of them go hand in hand. The product of photosynthesis give rise to cellular respiration. The product of cellular respiration is used also in photosynthesis. So let's go. I'll be showing that to you as we go. So imagine the amazing function of plants in your environment. Plants gives you oxygen. Now, this is what we call photosynthesis reaction, which is an extension, which is a reverse of cellular respiration. This is right here. Right here is photosynthesis reaction. All right. Now, what happens here, you can see it here clearly. Now, you breathe out CO2, you breathe this out. Plant is going to take what you breathe out, coupled with water, and then use it when chlorophyll attracts sunlight to make sugar and oxygen. Then you are going to breathe in this oxygen again and eat this sugar. When you eat this sugar, you breathe in oxygen again and then breathe out CO2. So now, you know that too much CO2 kills. You have seen people, I've heard of story of people who died because of of too much exposure to CO2. When too much CO2, carbon dioxide, is in circulation, it will deprive people of oxygen, and that can lead to loss of life. Now, so what plant does is to help us clean excess CO2, the CO2 that you breathe out. Aside from the fact that they are going to use it to make glucose, they are also making the environment to be clean. And that's why you notice that the plant trees all around, you have plants all around. You will notice that in environments where there are more plants, that's the environment where there is cleaner air. So you notice that people who live in urban area actually live healthy than people who live in people who live in rural environments actually live healthy than people who live in urban environment, because in rural environment there are farms, there are plants all over. When there is less vehicle, so there's less CO2 in circulation, less company, all of those, so they have cleaner environment, they live more healthy, there's less chances of cancer, all of those things are less there because plants capture excess CO2 and then give us cleaner oxygen. So when you see plants, respect them. All right? So this is the whole cycle of the process. You see that you have light coming in, falling into plants, and the part of the plant that is responsible for attracting the light is the chlorophyll, which is inside the chloroplast. So they are going to attract the light, then use that to generate organic molecule, which is glucose in this case, and oxygen. Then the the product received is what you take in. When you take it in, you're going to heat it, and then you take in oxygen with it, right? You eat the food, take in oxygen with it, breathe in oxygen, then burn the food and use that to undergo cellular respiration and then produce CO2 again for plant to work. The plant again is going to take the CO2 so that it does not pollute the environment and then use it to also make food for you. So that's how the cycle runs. So it's a cycle. The byproduct of plant is oxygen. That is what we take in for survival. The byproduct that we take out is CO2. That is what plants take in to make food. Now, photosynthesis simply means synthesis of food using sunlight, is to make food using sunlight. And plant does this because they have a pigment, which is the chlorophyll, that is located in the chloroplast that attracts sunlight. All right. The purpose of photosynthesis is going to be to provide food. So they nourish the whole environment. They don't just provide food, they also provide oxygen. All right. So photosynthesis, plant does not just provide food for us through photosynthesis, they also provide oxygen for us. And so you see sunlight comes in through the chlorophyll, accepts sunlight, makes sugar, and also release oxygen to the environment. So the lady there and the guy there, they take oxygen and then also eat some food. And then they are going to breathe in oxygen and then breathe out CO2, which comes back to the plant. And also you have water goes to the plant. And that is how the cycle runs. Now, plants that makes food, we call them autotrophs, because autotrophs means self-feeders. They feed themselves. They don't depend on others to feed them. So we call them autotrophs. All right. So that they sustain themselves without eating anything derived from other organisms. So they are autotrophs. They are self-feeders. Then we call them producers as well. All right. They produce organic molecules. They also produce CO2. They also produce oxygen for us to survive on. Organic molecule is their main product. Oxygen is their byproduct. Now, the organisms or the plants that use sunlight to make their food, we call them photoautotrophs. Now, the reason we are talking about this is because they are chemoautotrophs, which we'll talk about later. But when the plants use sunlight to make their food, we call them photoautotrophs, meaning that they are photosynthetic organisms that make their food. All right. So photosynthesis occurs also in algae and some protists and also some prokaryotic. Almost all plants are photoautotrophs because they use energy from sunlight to make their organic molecules. Let's go. Now, so you see cyanobacteria here, they are autotrophs, they are photoautotrophs as well. You see purple sulfur bacteria, Amortella algae, they are photoautotrophs. Now, autotrophs versus phototrophs. Now, the difference between autotrophs and phototrophs is simply that autotrophs use they make their food, and phototrophs make their food using sunlight. Now, heterotroph is actually the other portion there, which is consumer. All right. So autotrophs can, like I said, autotrophs can be chemoautotrophs and it can be photoautotrophs. All right. So when the plants that use sunlight are the photoautotrophs. So heterotrophs obtain organic material from other organisms. They are the consumers of the biospheres, and that's you. Some consumers consume other living things, and if they consume other living things, we call them some consumers consume other living things, and when we are talking about the types of feeders, we call them carnivores, right? That's that, but we call them decomposers because they decompose things. So they eat dead organic materials or feces. Fossil fuels were formed from the remains of organisms that died hundreds of million years ago. Almost all heterotrophs depend on photoautotrophs, plants that make food with sunlight. Almost heterotroph depends on plants. So you see those cycles there. Almost all heterotrophs depend on plants. They depend on photoautotrophs, either directly or indirectly for food. And even if it's not for food, it's going to be for oxygen, and of course for both. Now, we already talked about this, but we are just going to reinforce it now. Plant and other photosynthetic organisms that use photosynthesis at all, they have chloroplast. The chloroplast is the big guy that contains chlorophyll. So chlorophyll is the pigment inside chloroplast. It's like you're talking of this pen. This pen writes, but this is not what is writing. What is writing is inside, is the ink inside it. The ink is chlorophyll. The whole pen itself is chloroplast. So chloroplast is the entire thing. And I will be talking about the anatomy of the chloroplast. I will pick each of them and talk about the component of the chloroplast as we go. Because the chloroplast is like the covering, it's the membrane. It's just like you have mitochondria. The chloroplast is the membrane that contains the structure that contains the chlorophyll. I'll talk about that. Now, so if you look at this, so the plant and other, they have chloroplast. The chloroplasts are structurally similar to and likely evolved from photosynthetic bacteria. And I think I'll talk about endosymbiotic theory when we're looking at cells. Endosymbiotic theory that talked about that eukaryotic cells may have developed from prokaryotic cells that eat up another prokaryotic cells and now develop into photosynthetic and the respiratory one, right? Now, the structural organization of these organelles allow for the chemical reaction of photosynthesis to occur, and I'll be talking about that here particularly. Now, you see in here, before I go ahead and look at the story there, but if you look at this here is what we call the chloroplast. So this entire stuff is the chloroplast. And inside the chloroplast, there is the thylakoid inside the chloroplast. Now, if you look at the thylakoid, I think of the thylakoid as disc, just like you have your pancake. So we call it disc, but it's just like your pancake. Now, think about the chloroplast like the thylakoid like that. So this is the chloroplast, which is the entire structure inside a plant. Now, when you see the chloroplast, inside the chloroplast, those are different discs there. You see, this one have 1, 2, 3, 4 discs. This one have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 discs. There are 6 discs there. So discs are like pancake. When you stack pancake on each other, so this is a pancake, this is another pancake, this is another pancake, this is another pancake. Each of the pancake is a thylakoid. Each of the pancake is a thylakoid. So this one, just one stack, just one disc is a thylakoid. Now, when you gather the discs together to form a stack, you see this is now a stack. This stack is actually called granum. So you see, this stack is called a granum. So a granum is simply a stack of thylakoid. Don't mix it up. The leaf have the thylakoid have the chloroplast. Inside the chloroplast, there's a thylakoid. The thylakoid is what I linked to pancake. When you stack your pancake after making it, that is a stack of thylakoid. A stack of thylakoid is called a granum. And when you have more than one granum, you are going to call it more than one granum, and it's called grana. So multiple granum is called grana because you have plural, right? So this is a granum, this is another granum, this is another granum, another granum, another granum, another granum, another granum. So there is a lot of grana there, but each of the disc itself is a thylakoid. It is actually inside the thylakoid that we have the chlorophyll. So the chlorophyll is actually located inside the thylakoid. The chlorophyll is actually located inside the thylakoid. So chlorophyll is located in thylakoid. All right. So let me go ahead and talk about the stories that are here. We just review the things I may not have talked about. So most photosynthetic synthesis plants occur in the leaves. All right. The chloroplasts are found in the cell of the mesohyl. And here is the mesophyll rather, the interior tissue of the leaf. So it's inside the leaf, right? Inside the mesophyll. That's the mesophyll there, right? Now, CO2 is going to enter and exit the leaf through the opening, which is on the leaf, that is called stomata. So the stomata is the point of exchange for CO2 to enter and oxygen to leave. So plants breathe out oxygen, they breathe in CO2, contrary to what we do, right? Now, veins transport water from the root and export sugar to non-photosynthetic part of the plant. Let's go. Now, look at this. So a chloroplast has an envelope of two membranes surrounding a dense fluid, which is called stroma. So this stroma is simply a fluid, and that is what is here. So all these, they are fluids all over here. So you have the thylakoid, you have the granum, pleural, grana, then inside the space, all the space in there, you have stroma, which is a liquid. Now, thylakoid are connected sacs in the chloroplast that compose of a third membrane system. The thylakoid may be stacked, which is into columns called granum singular, grana plural. The chlorophyll actually reside inside the thylakoid membrane, inside the thylakoid. That's a green pigment that is located inside the thylakoid, and that is what attracts sunlight. All right, just a quick view. I will do this, then I will go ahead and start the other part in the next video, but I will talk about the introduction here. But the major act of photosynthesis, I'll be talking about those two steps, the light and dark reaction, or the light dependent and the light independent reaction. So this is again cellular respiration, photosynthesis. This is again the photosynthetic reaction. You see CO2, water, light energy, produce this, and this. Now, don't let this confuse you at all. You can have 6 H2O here and have no H2O here. It's just balancing the reaction. We can just change this. The number is just, we can change this to 12 now, to 18 now, and have 12 here. So it's just the number. So if you change this to 6 H2O on this side, on the reactant side, then you are going to have 0 H2O here. If you have 12 here, you have 6 here. If you have 18 here, you have 12 here. So it's just balancing it it's not a problem. So if you are used to having no water molecule here, it's okay. All right, so these are the reactants, and here are the products. The splitting of water, I will talk about each of those as we go. Now, photosynthesis is a complex series of reactions that can be summarized with the equation above. The overall chemical chain during photosynthesis is a reverse of cellular respiration. I've talked about that. The chloroplast is going to split the water molecule. It's going to split it into hydrogen and oxygen, which I'm going to discuss when we are talking about the stages. All right, let's go. So all photosynthetic organisms require hydrogen source, but it varies among organisms. Sulfur bacteria, for instance, now they use H2S, hydrogen sulfide, instead of water. So that makes them to form the yellow globules of sulfur as waste product instead of oxygen, right? Because they are not using H2O. Photosynthesis reverses the direction of flow of electron compared to what you see in cellular respiration. So it's just like a reverse reaction, right? The flow of electron is going to be on the reverse. It's just once you understand cellular respiration, you understand photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is also a redox reaction, like cellular respiration is, in which H2O is used to oxidize, and CO2 is reduced. Now, when you come here and you look at this, if you still remember when I talk about oxidation and reduction in chapter 9, when I look at cellular respiration. Now, if you come here now we are saying that H2O is oxidized. Oxidation is addition of oxygen or reduction of water or removing of hydrogen. Oxidation is addition of oxygen or removal of water of hydrogen. Again, oxidation is removal of hydrogen or addition of oxygen. Addition of oxygen or removal of hydrogen. That is oxidation. Now, so when you come here now, you will notice that the H2O that is here is the one that becomes O2 here. So that means hydrogen has been removed from it. Again, oxidation is removal of hydrogen. And if you come here, you will notice that oxygen here is 6. Oxygen here has become 12. So addition of oxygen. So it fulfilled both rules, addition of oxygen, removal of hydrogen. And so we say that water became oxidized to become O2. Now, what relevance does that make to us? It tells you that when you are looking at cellular respiration, photosynthesis, for instance, the oxygen that plants release that you breathe out, it's actually gotten from water. So it's the water that has been oxidized to become oxygen. So the oxygen we breathe in is from the water molecule that is involved in this process. And then it is the carbon dioxide that you breathe out that is modified to become glucose. So we say the carbon dioxide is reduced to become glucose. And reduction simply means hydrogen is added and oxygen is removed. So now you will notice how many oxygen do we have here? We have 6 times 2, that makes it 12. But by the time we came here, how many oxygen do we have? We have only 6. So oxygen has been removed, reduction. How many hydrogen do we have here? None. How many hydrogen do we have here? 12. Hydrogen has been added. So addition of hydrogen, reduction. Removal of oxygen, reduction. All right? So we say that photosynthesis is an endogonic reaction. Why is it endogonic? Endogonic reaction involves energy. It will swallow energy from the environment. And of course, photosynthesis is going to trap energy from the environment compared to the energy that it releases. It doesn't release energy. This is potential energy, not energy. So don't think about that. This is potential energy. It's not energy. So photosynthesis, the energy consumed is more than the energy released. So we say it's an endogonic reaction because it's going to consume energy from the environment before the reaction can occur. Now, I will be stopping here and continue to look at this in the next chapter. I mean, the next video. But there are two stages for photosynthesis. There is a light reaction and there is a dark reaction. Now, we try not to call it dark reaction. We call it light dependent reaction and light independent reaction. The light independent reaction is what we call the Calvin cycle as well. And that is actually the reaction that produces where the sugar, the glucose, is actually produced. The light dependent reaction is light dependent reaction because it requires sunlight before it can proceed. But the light independent reaction does not require sunlight. Now, what does that mean? The light dependent reaction must happen in the light. So there must be light before this light dependent reaction can ever happen. If there's no light, if there's no sunlight, this reaction cannot happen because it must happen in the presence of light. For some of you that are doing the lab now, you notice how you do this experiment to see what's going to happen in the absence of light is that you put your procedure into a cabinet and close it, or you use foil paper to wrap it to prevent exposure to sunlight. We just want to see what's going to happen when it's exposed to sun, when it's not exposed to sunlight. Now, the light reaction is dependent on light. It cannot happen without light. However, the light independent reaction, which we usually call dark reaction or Calvin cycle, the issue about it, it's only that it does not depend on light, but it can happen anytime. Think about it. If the process is simultaneous. So if the light reaction just finished happening now when there's light, do we need to go to wait till night where there's no light before the dark reaction can happen, or the light independent reaction can happen? No, of course, no. The light independent reaction can proceed right after the light dependent reaction because it goes in that order. The only problem is this. The only thing is this. If light shuts down, if there's no sunlight right after the light dependent reaction, the light independent reaction will still proceed because it does not need sunlight. But it does not necessarily happen in the dark. It may happen even when not in the dark. Okay, when we do the experiment in the lab and we want to ensure that we keep it in the dark, is to ensure that we have fulfilled all righteousness, to make sure that we have fulfilled everything that needs to be done. All conditions are met to make sure that the experiment will run. Okay, so photosynthesis consists of light reaction and Calvin cycle. The Calvin cycle is the same thing as is the same thing as light independent reaction. Is the same one that we call dark reaction in our mind, right? And all right, so that's it. So here is the light dependent reaction, and here is the Calvin cycle there. So the light reaction is actually where water will split so that it's going to make electron and proton and also release oxygen. So water is what splits to form oxygen as byproduct. It's going to reduce NADP plus to NADPH. What that means is that NADP plus is going to accept electron. Now, instead of NAD plus in cellular respiration, we will be talking about NADP plus here. Just think about that. The whole thing just added photosynthesis P. It doesn't mean photosynthesis. I'm just saying it so that you don't forget. So NADP plus here instead of NAD plus in cellular respiration. So it's going to become NADPH when it accepts the electrons, because the electrons accepted is also going to be used in the Calvin cycle. So this is going to accept electron and now become NADPH. Then ATP will be generated through photophosphorylation in the case here, and you'll be seeing that as we study the process as we go. So I'm going to stop here today, and in the next video, I'll talk about the process, the steps of the carving cycle, and the steps of the light reaction, of the light dependent reaction.